Today, we take a look at the hard-hitting FCAR. As you could guess by the name, the FCAR is inspired by the real-world SCAR rifle, and in most video games when they feature this weapon type, the SCAR tends to deal a lot of damage, but has one or two major drawbacks that prevents some from using it and prevents the weapon from being completely broken. Fortunately, in the case of the finals, the recoil is manageable and the reload times are very competitive with other weapons in the game. For the sake of my mental health and because it's easier to say, from here on I will be mentioning the FCAR as the SCAR. So let's compare the stats of the SCAR with the AKM. For this video, I'll be using the stat sheets made by Reddit user FCAR. I also want to quickly mention that the weapon stats can and will occasionally change with game updates, so check out the spreadsheet in the description below to ensure there hasn't been any major changes since the release of this video. You may also want to check the latest patch notes for the game, which will have the most up-to-date changes with weapon balance. The first thing that surprised me is that the base damage of the SCAR is a little more than the AKM. Originally, I thought both weapons had the same damage, but that's not the case. The SCAR deals 26 damage per shot as opposed to the AKM's 20. It's something to be aware of as the AKM will require 2 additional shots to down a light class player, 3 for medium class, and 4 additional shots against the heavy class. Of course, if you mix in headshots, it does bring it closer to the SCAR's performance. For headshot damage, the SCAR deals 39 damage and the AKM deals 30. On paper, you will always end up dealing more damage with the SCAR when compared to the AKM shot for shot. Both weapons fire the same rate of 600 RPM, so overall the SCAR has a better damage profile than the AKM. Even so, there are a few good reasons why people will still prefer to use the AKM, so let's go over the rest of the stats and see what's going on. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video so far, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more guides, gameplay, and gaming news. Alright, let's continue. First off, the SCAR has a 20 round mag, whereas the AKM has 36. This means that while you can deal more damage per shot with the SCAR, regardless of where your bullets land, you will be spending a lot of time reloading during gunfights. Since the magazine size is smaller though, the reload time for the SCAR is going to be faster than the AKM. While you may have to jump in and out of gunfights constantly, the faster reload speed will let you get back in the action sooner. You would have to make that decision of whether you want the larger mag size of the AKM to stay in combat much longer each time, or if you want the faster reload speeds of the SCAR. And of course, the SCAR does have a different and harsher recoil pattern than the AKM, which can be difficult to learn and regularly control. To review, the big trade-off with the SCAR is learning how to control the recoil, sneak in headshots, and find ways to dive in and out of gunfights to reload the weapon. And if you want to be in gunfights for longer periods of time and have more manageable recoil, you may prefer to use the AKM. So let's discuss what you can do to match the recoil and give you some ways to create space to safely reload the SCAR. At first, the SCAR's recoil seems pretty straightforward as the recoil goes up and to the right. So obviously to counteract that, you would have to hold down and to the left to keep your shots on target. That said, the intensity of the SCAR's recoil isn't the same from shot to shot, so you will have times when the weapon's recoil is harsher for 1 or 2 shots and then it levels back down. As you continue to use the weapon and get familiar with it, this should become less of an issue for close to mid-range fights. Holding down the trigger to get a kill at long range isn't necessarily impossible, but will take a lot more time to consistently get your shots on target, much less eliminating the player. With the amount of damage the SCAR deals, even if you can't stay on target, it can very easily deter players from pushing in. While you may struggle to get eliminations at first, if you're cutting down the enemy's health in half or more, they have to either risk pushing forward or have to back off entirely. Along with learning the weapon's recoil pattern, you can also use your movement to make the recoil easier to control. Since we know the general recoil of the SCAR is up and to the right, if you strafe to the left, it can help limit that horizontal recoil. Of course, always strafing to the left in every gunfight isn't always going to be effective, and is fairly easy for players to counter. So while you are strafing left and right, you at least know that you have the advantage when you strafe left, and will have to compensate a little more for the recoil when strafing to the right. There's also a more advanced way to control your recoil, which is called Recoil Smoothing. I don't understand this mechanic that well myself, and I have to take some time to find out how to utilize it. I recommend checking this video by Viscos, hopefully I said that right, which explains this mechanic in detail. The link to that video is in the description below. Lastly, don't fall into the trap of constantly mag dumping against long range targets, Sometimes tap firing or resetting the recoil could be all you need to get that long range elim, and sometimes doing a recoil reset will help you out at medium range as well. Now, let's quickly go through the ways to reload your SCAR without being completely defenseless. It should be no surprise, but you will want to use your gadgets to create space and break the line of sight between you and the enemy. The more familiar you are with this map, the easier this task can be. On a map like Vegas, you'll want to look for these small vents that you can slide through. It doesn't seem like much, but they've been lifesavers for me in plenty of fights. And when you're on other maps with a lot of verticality, remember where the ziplines are, put up a few yourself if you need to, and get used to running around the different levels of a building. The more familiar you are with these buildings, the better off you'll be. The next thing to consider would be the goo grenade and the goo bins. They are there to cut off enemy line of sight and give you some time to recover. The goo can be destroyed relatively quickly with gunfire, actual fire, and explosives, so you may not want to stick around for too long. My favorite gadget that I use all the time to create space is the bounce pad. This is very useful in maps like Monaco or Seoul or any other setting where you're in or near a 3-story building. This way you can bounce up, choose a floor on your way up or down, and continue your escape. It's not always the most effective method, and if you use the bounce pad while you're in the open, it just makes you an easier target. I think with these examples, you can kind of figure out ways to combine these methods, as well as rely on other gadgets, such as the landmine, to stall opponents and force them to either take damage, blow up the landmine, or find an alternative route. Also, remember that the SCAR has a quick reload time, so you don't always need to run away, but find a corner to get the reload off and you're back in action. And that will do it for the SCAR, or the FCAR. I like this weapon more than the AKM due to its headshot multiplier and speedy reload times. While it is very effective at dealing damage, it is also very tempting to throw myself into gunfights and end up reloading in the open, something that you will never want to do. If you haven't considered using this weapon yet, I hope this video helps you out, and let me know what weapons you prefer to use in the finals. If you've gotten this far, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more videos more often. Until then, I'm Mr. Rain, and I will see you next time.